would like to welcome everybody, both our Zoom audience and our in-person audience here. This is terrific. I think most of you know this is the annual joint meeting between Williamsburg Bird Club and the Historic Rivers chapter of Virginia Master Naturalists. So it's a really nice group here. We also have, it's open to the public, so I'm hoping we have some family, visitors, guests. Welcome to everybody. This is going to be a real treat, and I want them to get all the time. So I'm not going to say much more. And when this presentation is over and we've had questions and answers, I do have a couple of really quick announcements, as does Connie Wrights, the president of HRC. Connie? So we don't really have an official business meeting with this meeting, but we will both make some really quick announcements. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Deb Woodward, who is going to introduce the team and tell you about what they do. I want to say that Deb is a cohort 6 sister of mine from Virginia Master Naturalists. It's all yours.
When I first became a Master Naturalist, I thought, I'm cohort 6. I'm just so late into this ball game. And now what are you on, like 15, 16? Okay, so welcome all the new cohort. And I know there's somebody in the new cohort that dropped off an animal to me. I don't know if you're here. Yeah, there you are. Hi, welcome. Glad you're here. Glad you're here. So we were invited by this joint group about 4 years ago, before COVID, to come and speak. And we brought a lot of live animals, birds and mammals. And it was a really wonderful meeting with everybody. And I really think everybody enjoyed it. So we were invited back 4 years later, and they asked for something a little bit different, not just bringing the ambassador animals, but talking about some of the rescue and rehab that actually goes on and what happens during that. So I brought with me a couple of great people that are going to help us tell those stories. And the first one is Julie Wobeck. You got to come up here where the Zoom people can see you. Here's Julie. And there we go. And Julie may be known to a lot of you because she really is the force behind a group called Tidewater Wildlife Rescue. And they're a hotline and get calls all day, every day about injured or orphaned or don't know what animals, really across the southeastern part of Virginia. And then those folks that answer that hotline know all the rehabbers in the area, know who takes what, who knows who has openings, and they coordinate getting that animal rescued if necessary, getting it transported if necessary, getting it to the appropriate rehabber. It is a big, big, big job. But along with that, Julie is the rescuer extraordinaire, and she has told me stories that are unbelievable and that are life-risking, and she's going to share some of those stories with us this evening. And then I have Colleen Harlow. Do you want to come up so people can see you? Colleen. Here's Colleen. Colleen is like the mother of AWARE. AWARE is the group of rehabbers that I belong to, that we all belong to. Stands for Alliance of Wild Animal Educators and Rehabilitators. And this is part of the education part right here. Well, Colleen has been doing this for 30 years now, 30 years. So at the end of our presentation, she does have just a couple of very special ambassador birds that she's going to share with you that demonstrate some of the rescue and rehab efforts as well. And they're kind of unique, so you probably want to stick around for that. Okay, we're going to get this screen sharing PowerPoint going. And
I also like to remind the folks at home to please mute yourselves on Zoom.
Here, right? You're here? That's right.
Thank you, technical support.
Okay, so most everyone, I'm certain, in this room has rescued something wild. Whether it just be on a hot day, you're going by and you see a worm on the sidewalk, getting ready to die. He's not going to make it to the grass in time, and you go and you move into the grass. You've saved a life. And that's how frequently we all start. Okay, not so many of us do some of the crazy stuff I do, but that's a start. I do it all the time. So, you know, what we do have to be trained to do it. There's a lot of knowledge that is needed for species-specific rescues. What you're going to do in the terrain that you're having to go to, there's a lot to know. So if we want to go to, does the animal actually need help? I don't know if you're going to go to the woodpecker store from that or not,
No,
Okay,
it'll come later.
okay.
But-
So
Nancy, people are not seeing the screen. Uh-oh.
Rick? We're on screen share.
Let's go back, do the screen sharing over again.
All right,
Just stop.
we're just
that.
we're gonna step out of this for a minute. How do we?
Okay, stop screen sharing. You need to get your controls back.
Just count it down for it. Just-
Zoom, I gotta go to Zoom.
Yeah,
All right, share content?
stop sharing. Is it,
No, I'm on share. I stopped it and now
Okay.
I want to
yeah,
share content. Screen,
right?
start broadcast.
Broadcast. Now it counts down. Okay,
That's gonna work.
they see it now?
I see it.
Sometimes it is.
Oh, Rick. Buy you dinner later, Rick. All right, everybody else.
are they good?
We're good.
Okay, so, you know, when we take calls on the line for whether an animal needs help or not, we'll get fledgling calls, bird fledglings. So that is a lot of calls during baby season that we handle, nestling, fledgling. Put the fledglings back, that you have to explain what a fledgling is and all of that. Those aren't necessarily rescues, but we do have pictures here or video of a rescue I went to do that wasn't a rescue, okay? And I did need to assess whether the bird actually needed to come in or not. So then we have when I arrive on scene. When I arrive on scene, I must be looking, if I have time, if ducklings are running in the road, mom just got killed, I don't have time to analyze the situation, but if I do, then I'm gonna stop and I'm gonna look to see what is going on. Where's the bird? Where's the more risky spot where he's gonna go to? Where can I cut him off from that? Assessment of scene is key. The next we're gonna go to is species. Okay, I do need to know my species. I need to know, for instance, what's the difference between a turkey vulture and a black vulture in the respect of a rescue?
It's not
Forwarding.
forwarding.
So the turkey vulture and the black vulture are the only vultures that we have in Virginia. So people will call them buzzards or they just don't know it's a vulture. I ask them every time, we're going to need a picture. Why do you need a picture? I told you it's a vulture. Well, these two birds are very, very different in personality. Okay. The turkey vulture with the red head is a slow motion guy. So he's going to see me coming and he's going to be like, oh, you don't see me. The black guy, he's going to, you know, if I even just step out of the car a mile away, he'd be like, oh, I'm out. And he is top speed. And I'm getting kind of old, so I have to really think what I'm going to do to catch a black vulture versus a turkey vulture. I'd like to bring a blocker with me, another person. And that helps a lot when you're doing somebody who's going to run fast. So the difference between these two are, that's just key, knowing your species. You had a black vulture rescue out in Chickahominy Haven that a young guy, and I was thinking to myself, well, I'm going to have a runner here. This is great. I'm going to have this guy run for me. So we come up and he's like, oh, it was here all day. And I look over and sure enough, he's over there slowly eking away like he's not going to see me. I didn't even have time to tell him. I just had to start running. And the chase was on, you know, across the field, through the bamboo woods. And once he got into the bamboo, he stopped and he turned and he looked at me and he was like, ah, you can't get me in here. I like threw my net down. I'm like, here I come, dude. Oh, here she's coming. So, you know, through a couple of people's backyards, jumping fences and grabbed the net and somebody ran the net in somebody's backyard and finally got the bird, came back, loaded him up. And the guy was still like, well, what? You have the bird. Where did you go? That's how a black vulture rescue goes. It gets wild. So
Probably needs those things just to-
No, but I wanted to go this way.
Oh, you want to go back, sorry.
right. So when we are doing a rescue, if you would see my car, you would see all the things that I had to be prepared for at the moment's notice. It's like a fire department. I have to be ready to drop and roll. And I've got to be pretty much ready for everything. I have bolt cutters, I have tree trimmers, I've got a variety of nets, variety of kennels and cages to put animals in. You know, I've come to some pretty wild situations. The eagles, you know, eagle is a runner. So a lot of times we'll get people that call in on eagles and they're like, he's been there all day. I had to leave. Nobody has eyes on, and it's only 2 hours from you. You're cool with that, right? Yeah, no problem. So you get out there, and of course, he's nowhere in sight. You know, frequently I've had to find them myself, and that can be quite a challenge. You have to understand what he's going to do, but the good finder is key. So in this particular instance, this was a story of a really, really good finder. Okay, this was a bass fisherman on the James who really didn't have time for this, as does anyone, right? I was working and I didn't have time to go home and get my gear. I only had what I had on me and with me at work because I was fairly close, within 20 minutes of him. So he could only pin his location. And I told him, I said, dude, I know you got things to do, but please don't leave. Do not leave. I'll never find him otherwise. So I had to go down some private property roads to stay out, keep out. And I'm driving down there in my van with no four-wheel drive. And I come to a huge mud puddle. So I'm like, okay, I'm not going to get stuck. So I jump out of the van, grab all my gear and run the last mile to the river. This guy meets me with his boat and takes me, of course, to a sheer cliff covered with sticky bush vines. And I said, naturally, they love sticky briars. So I get out and climb up to the top and then try to come down on the eagle. And the cuts are not from the eagle, those are all from the sticky bushes. But down the hill, I had to slide after him. The eagle went back down at the edge of the wood line. You can see the trees hanging over. I had to get my head up under there and net the eagle who's trying to push it off with his feet and bite me in the face. And the guys on the boat just going, no, I can't. I just can't. So finally get the eagle and load her up. And that was lead poisoning, which they can, with lead poisoning, they can have full strength for brief periods of time. So that's full boot fighting. And then they'll just be done. You know, it ruins their digestive and their lung capacity and all of that. And then they're just smoked, they're done. So here you see he's given it his all and he's done. That's pretty classic, but I would never have found this bird if this guy didn't stay and show me where it was. There's no way. I don't care if he pinned it or not. So that's just an example of how large the feet are on a female eagle.
It's just.
Another example of the size of an eagle there. So here is the pileated story. This is a story that I got called out for Jamestown Road, where she said, "Oh my God, there's a pileated woodpecker running across Jamestown Road. There, I don't know." I'm like, "Well, I'm close. I'll come." So I go over there and I can see him. You can hear me?
A little bit louder and slower if you could.
Okay.
And then my,
So he can't fly, so she thinks he's injured. And I get there and all of a sudden I have Mom dive bomb my head. Okay, we got a baby on our hands. And sure enough, when I saw him, you could see he's an older baby. And
Okay, you ready?
he's just doing his own thing. He's like, "Mom, I don't care. You told me to stay in this nest. I'm done with this thing. I'm moving on. I do my own thing." So I got him from the edge of the road and I went down into the ravine where everything down there was woodpecker heaven. Yeah, they had been to work everywhere. So what I wanted to do, running it by the rehabber as well, was to see what this bird would do. He wasn't injured. There was no injury. He had never been hit by a car. And he was on the tree. He would peck. He was like, just ignoring me like I wasn't even there. He was pecking on the tree, pretending as though he's getting his worms. And then he would low fly to some other place. And then he tried to squeeze himself through a fence and I had to pull him out of that. And I could hear his mom calling. And in this video, you're going to hear him calling and Mom responding. And in the end, I put him on a sweet gum that had some good bark and he just went all the way up. He was cruising on that. So I left him with his mom to follow and be irritated with her son.
Hear you. Where are you?
You can see how his tail feathers are shorter, like a older juvenile. But that was a happy ending for him. I like the kind of rescue that is a happy ending. This one was a story, and we do get many, many stories of not only snakes, but bunnies and every kind of wildlife stuck in this garden netting. Super dangerous. This is something that I recommend people using metal wire to prevent predation on their plants versus something that they can get tangled in. Lots of owl and hawk issues on this as well. So in this particular case, this is a story of a young boy who really, really cared. Okay, his yard was covered in netting, but he had learned the love of snakes at school. And when this snake was found, his parent had cut the snake free and left it in this ball and thrown it into the woods. But the boy cried and cried and tried to convince his parents to call for rescue for the snake, which they finally did do. So when I came, that's what I found. And it's quite a bit of agony to cut this netting off. I'm quite professional at this stage of the game, but you know, they typically need to come into care with some bodily damage. And you can imagine what would have happened if this snake had been left there to die slowly in the woods. And one of our wonderful people that is in this room tonight took this snake in and kept him to make sure he was okay. And that's Dr. K right here. How we got to meet is over the love of snakes and caring for them. So this snake did make it and was released. And I did talk to the little boy afterwards. I asked him to bring out some water for the snake to drink, and he was so happy that he had made the difference, and he had. This is a great horn, and if you're looking at the picture, that is a large lure. It has 4 different hooks on it. This bird was also out at Wacomico River, so straight up 2.5 hours from me. The night before, I got called on it, and he was flighted. So he was still flighted, and it's a long ways from me. So I said, I can't come now because I've got to work, and he's still flighted. So the next morning, she called me crying, and she was like, please come. You've got to try, you've got to try. I'm like, okay. I turned around, I left work, and I just drove out there. 5 minutes before I got there, she lost sight of him. That's also classic, okay? It always happens. So I just step out with no gloves on. I just grab my net real quick. I'm like, I'm going this way, you go this way. And I went straight to the owl, who was in the woods. There was a bunch of sticky vines in front of me and the owl, and he's looking at me, I'm looking at him, and I'm thinking to myself, well, he's either gonna fly before I can net him, getting through the sticky vine, or I'm gonna get him. It's one of the two. So he just turned to flap his wings once, and I, bam, got the net on him. And it was crucial because there's a fine line between the ability to lose his flight and not be able to catch him. He's still flying, but starving. He's not able to feed himself. So before he gets too skinny and we can't bring him back from that, it was tough. And it was really crucial that that's when I got that bird. So then we rushed over to Deb's, and Deb and I worked on that bird for an hour, sweating, cussing. There was a lot of cussing going on to extract each and every one of these, which were definitely embedded in the skin. They just weren't, wrapped around his wing. So this bird was also perfectly rehabbed by Deb and released back that long distance drive right back to his home. Here is another one Deb and I worked on, and Dr. K. Okay, this is another Dr. K story. These people were good finders who stayed with until I got there. The owl was down already because it was starving. It had a large bass hook embedded in the foot. This was an old injury. It was already granulated. Your first thought when you come to that, it's like, oh my God, just rip it out right now. It's got to go. It's got to go. No, what's going to kill this bird first is starvation. So Deb and I calmed each other down, and we're like, okay, we got to get some food on board and make an appointment with Dr. K to sedate him and get it properly removed. If we ruin the foot getting it out, if he loses any talent ability, he's non-releasable. So it was crucial. And Dr. K did an amazing job on that bird. And we also released that one. So again, anybody that does fish, we would ask that everybody be responsible fishermen. Clean up after yourself. If you see others dropping or leaving, speak to them or pick it up. We get a lot of geese that people will just throw down their fishing line when they're done with it, leave a pile of it there. And 9 times out of 10, that's what happens with geese. They walk to the water and their legs get tangled together, but they can still fly. And this is a crucial rescue. when they're flighted, but their legs are tied together with fishing line. It happens all the time, all the time. So we have kingfishers that hunt from overhanging branches on the water, which is of course where tangled line gets stuck. And many times they have died there, slowly hanging from the fishing line, from a perch that they had gone to every day of their life to fish from. The bird, in other words, but so it is very important. So this was a call that came in to the Tidewater Wildlife Rescue dispatch line to me, and one morning, people called in and said they had a raccoon stuck in their tree. I'm like, stuck in your tree, stuck. Okay, well, as you can see, that's stuck. Okay. So this girl she thought she was a little smaller than she actually was. And she was wedged in. Now, how are you going to do this? You can think, how are you going to get it done? Tree climber. Okay. So we called this tree climber, and we have our few that we use. And this guy is amazing. If you had seen the video of him doing it, it was excruciating to see. He was literally having to chainsaw around this animal's head to get it out. It was awful to see, but he didn't ever injure the raccoon. That's the hole she was stuck in. And he managed to cut all around it and free her. And then we got her contained, and we were able to release the next day with no injury. And that's a sweet little face that got saved.
Okay, my turn, huh? Any questions at this point? We will take questions at the end as well, but if you have any questions specifically about rescues, these are just a few examples of the many, many stories she could tell about her rescues. Any questions now? Okay. So once the rescuer has contained them, they try to find transportation, and then they try to find a rehabber. So I want to just share with you some of the things that happen when the animal gets to the rehabber. So the first thing I need to do is an initial examination. I'll watch the animal, bird or mammal or reptile. I'll watch it for a while and make sure that it is stable and can withstand an examination. If not, I may let it rest. If it's too stressed right now, I may rest and let it rest and come back to it. But in the case of this hawk, I will watch it in the crate, see if it's doing anything that looks neurological, try to decide early on what's going to be the initial treatment. Does it need that period of rest? Is it going to need medicine for pain? I'm going to look at the body and the limbs and the wings and the legs in case of the bird. And I'm going to examine it. You see me pulling out the wing. I'm feeling along each bone in that wing and the skin and looking at the feathers to determine whether there are any breaks. Is there a good range of motion? Are there any visible bones protruding? Are there any wounds? Does this animal have its full range of motion? And how are the eyes reacting to me? Handling it? Does it look like it's watching me and following me? I'll use a light to determine whether the eyes react to light. Here I am looking in actually the ear. I think it's an owl that I've got there, but I'm actually looking in the ears. So I look in the ears to determine whether there's any blood indicating some kind of internal bleeding. Is there bruising? It can let me know where the impact, if it's been hit by a car or hit a window or a tree. So I'll look at the ears. Here I am looking in the mouth. Sometimes we have,
Is this bird sedated?
They are not sedated. As a rehabber, I have no way to sedate them.
So
But
how do you keep it from biting?
so we're pretty good at it, right? You get better with time. If it's a large bird like an eagle, I will call somebody to help me, like Julie or some other people I know will come and help me. But other than that, I can hold their talons. That is the most dangerous part of them. They do bite, but it's usually not as serious. And so I can cover their heads when I'm not looking directly in their mouth. That kind of calms them down. And I swear sometimes they just know that you're there to help them. It just seems like they are calm and they let you examine them. But again, I've got control of the talons where somebody might be there helping me. I can't remember in this particular picture.
Or you have 4 hands.
I do. No, no. You feel like you need them. But I will use my body too. You're going to see some pictures where I'm feeding animals, and sometimes I'll use my body to force their talons down so that they can't pick them up while I'm opening mouths and things like that. So a lot of times I'll look in their mouths because we do have birds in particular that come to us with plaques in their mouth that can be a fungal infection that we need to address. There are wounds to the mouth. We had recently a hawk that came in with a big wound right at this joint right here. So anyway, we're looking to see, is there anything caught in there and so forth? Are they dehydrated? I can look in their mouths and determine if they've got dehydration. You know, do you recognize this bird? Do you know what this is? Peregrine falcon, right? Beautiful, isn't it? And so I wanted to see whether this bird had use of its wings. That's why I was holding it up like that.
That is the bird from West Point.
Yes.
Bridge.
Yeah. So that bird has a tag. I don't know if you can see. He has a band on his leg, and we we're able to call Brian at William and Mary, and he has been responsible for a peregrine project. And he could tell me that this peregrine came from the West Point Bridge, and it was indeed found in West Point in the back of somebody's truck. And he had been visiting that site, and that peregrine had been there for quite a while. I can't remember exactly what, but this peregrine was sent to the Wildlife Center of Virginia, and it had some injury, which
The wing.
it was the wing, okay, that could not be fixed. These birds have to fly perfectly and fast. And they determined that the wing could not be repaired so that the animal could, you know, live well and feed itself in the wild. So it was humanely euthanized. Sadly, it's such a beautiful bird. Okay, so while I'm looking at the bird, I'm also asking myself questions. And thinking about what is the initial treatment. Does this animal need pain medication? Now, as a rehabber, I don't have access to all sorts of medicines, but I do have a cooperating veterinarian, Dr. K, and he can prescribe medicine to me for particular animals. And sometimes I can figure out the protocol, or I know the protocol of what an animal might need when they first come in. Is it an orphan baby? Do I need to make sure it's getting warmth and food? Does it have head trauma? Are there parasites? I got in a great horned owl last night, and it was just covered with flat flies. And we joke about doing the flat fly dance. It's kind of like, you know, you get one on you and you're just like, oh. So I had to deal with that right away. Wound management. Are there wounds that I need to be thinking about? How am I going to treat this wound? Are there broken bones? Is this animal really starving and needs food more than anything else? Or does it need to be hydrated before I try to do anything else? The same great horned owl that I got in last night is totally emaciated, starving, and I need to make sure that I very carefully reintroduce food to it. It's that's such a condition, such a bad condition. But hopefully we've gotten the flies that we're sucking blood from it, and hopefully we'll be able to bring that one back too. Okay. So here are some of the things, just some of the things that a rehabber may do. Sometimes the animals might require a rehabber to do some special bathing. This is a great blue heron that had gotten in an oil spill, but not just oil that French fries are cooked in. This was very viscous, industrial thick oil. And as you watch, you'll see it on our skin. It was very, very thick and took lots and lots of washes and multiple people doing it. There we are. You can just see it on my arms or the other people's arms. And we're just washing and washing. And then we had to deal with, now we've got all this toxic oil in the tub, in the soapy tub. What are we going to do with that? And my sweet husband, who might be watching, if you are, thank you, agreed to take buckets and buckets and make multiple trips to take it to the dump and get rid of it appropriately. This is a great horned owl who decided that he'd like to eat a skunk. And great horned owls are known for eating skunks. Whew, boy, that skunk stunk. That skunk stunk on the owl. And so here that owl is getting a special bath in a de-skunking formula someone gave me. Did you ever? Did you ever wonder what a wet great horned owl looked like? Look at those eyes. He's just so cute. Yeah. And this is a owl I just recently had, Dr. K, this is our owl. And he had a bad, severe case of bumblefoot, and he was getting daily spa treatments. This was an Epsom salt bath that he got every day. And there he is getting his, I think he actually learned to love those soaks. Here's some other things that happened. Believe it or not, that clump of feathers there in the corner is a Carolina wren caught in a glue trap. So this is something else that might come into us. Skinks, birds, little chipmunks, other little animals get caught in these glue traps. Screech owls, yeah, they're going after the bugs that you may have put them down for. Yes?
How did you know the Carolina wren?
How did I know it was a Carolina wren? Well, actually, I can look at that pile of feathers and know that's a Carolina wren, but we did get this Carolina wren off of the glue trap and saved it.
But strangely enough, if it's a little bird on a glue trap, 99% chance it's a Carolina wren.
Yeah, because they're always getting into trouble. They're always getting into trouble, but they're so funny. But anyway, so we wanted to show this so we could say, please don't use glue traps. I mean, even if you're trying to get mice, it's better to use those old-fashioned traps than just, instead of letting them get stuck on a glue trap where they're going to slowly die. If you're trying to get the bugs in your garage, those little hopping crickets, well, the birds love them. So if they have access to wherever you've got that glue trap, they will get stuck. We get lots and lots of this. We use a oil, mostly like a vegetable oil, but you have to be very careful with birds, because if you cover that bird with oil, then you've hurt its breathing systems, and it can die just from that or from hypothermia. So after we get it off with the littlest bit of oil that we can possibly use, we have to start slowly bathing parts of it with Dawn detergent to get that oil off, drying them so that they won't get hypothermia. But we do it. Okay, here's another thing we have to deal with. This is another great blue heron. And if you look on its upper back, I guess, and up that wing, kind of all that yellow stuff you see, that's called fly strike. It's fly eggs. So we have to deal a lot with pests like that, parasites like that. So these eggs will hatch into maggots, and they will find a opening and start to just kind of eat away at the bird. It's just awful, but we do have medicines and techniques that we can use to save the birds and to kill those parasites. So it's good this one came in. Then of course, wound care. This is a tiny little baby squirrel. And this baby, our guess is it fell from its nest and it hit every branch all the way down. Okay, so sometimes they come in and they're cat attacks. And if they're cat attacks, we have to make sure to get them started on an antibiotic. But this one was not that case. We believe it just kept hitting things as it fell. So we have to deal with it. We're putting some silver sulfodiazine on the wounds, or I am. This squirrel really looked bad, but it made a full recovery and was just fine, was released in my yard. Here's a black vulture that also has a wound that we had to deal with. This black vulture was trapped in this big tomato can. And the way it was trapped was that the lid had not been opened all the way around. So you've got the can, and the lid was pushed down into the can. So when he somehow stepped into the can, it got caught by that lid, by that sharp lid that was cutting his leg. And he was flying around with that can.
Yeah.
You rescued him.
He was flighted when I got him.
Julie rescued him, and we worked together on this. There are the wounds. The black is kind of necrotic, dead skin all around that knee joint. And there we are putting the silver sulfodiazine on it and then bandaging it. And there he is in his crate because he's still in intensive care, of course, getting his meal, but we were able to successfully get that all fixed up and bandaged up and healed up. Here's a little bunny, and I chose not to show you the graphic picture, but this little bunny was in its little nest, safe and sound, and somebody ran over it with a lawnmower. But it happens. They hide their nest so well that you don't realize they're in the grass. So there's never any judgment because it just happens. But the tip of his foot was cut off. So we had to, treat that wound. But I decided to make a little boot for him. So once I made the boot, he could join other little baby bunnies I had, and it healed. He wasn't going to grow the front of his foot back, but it healed well enough that he could be released. And there he is being released. Cute little bunny. Bunnies are my favorites. All right, this is an interesting case. This is a, what is it? House finch. And it came in, and he had a couple of brothers and sisters. It came in with splayed legs. You see how far out they are? And this bird actually was worse than this when it first came in. And I actually did a little therapy where I got that black, it's a type of electrical tape that's kind of spongy and really good for grasping, for the birds to grasp. And I would work pushing his feet in, getting him to hold on to that and learn to bring his legs together. And then when I wasn't actively working with him like that, I used vet tape, to tape his legs in two places, but he could still perch. I had it such that he could still perch, but his legs wouldn't splay. And I really wasn't sure how it was all going to go, but he did indeed learn to perch and fly and was released. Okay, this turtle came to me from a previous veterinarian. Somebody brought this turtle in, and it had fishing line coming out of its mouth. So the veterinarian called me, and she'd taken an x-ray, and there was a hook making its way through the digestive tract. And the veterinarian asked me, can you just keep this turtle for a while and see if it passes the hook? You know, if it passes the hook, great. I'm thinking, oh, great. And this is a water turtle, you know, and I've got this yucky, gross water that I'm dealing with every day looking for a hook. I mean, how is that ever going to happen? And I was really ready to give up, but lo and behold, one day cleaning out the big container it was in, and there was the hook. So immediately it was releasable. And we always have to release turtles back to where they came from. They do not do well if they've been released in a different location. They will wander forever trying to get back and find their territory. So I quickly called the woman who had brought it in, and she took it back, and it was released back to its little pond. Feeding is such a huge thing that rehabbers do. And it's so daggone cute. So little bunnies, and we often have these little tiny syringes with special nipples that we use for a lot of the animals. Sometimes when they're younger, I didn't have any pictures, but we actually have to tube feed the tiny, tiny ones, especially bunnies and possums. Okay, so I don't know what else I'll say about that. There's a little squirrel that's getting tube fed as well. There they are. They're so cute. I know what I was going to say with these little ones, the little squirrels and the little bunnies. At first, I often have to set alarms and get up during the night, but it doesn't last long, a week or so. And then they're able to go all night long. So I just enjoy it when I'm up with these cute little babies. You can't pick up a baby bunny and start feeding it and feel bad about getting up. You just can't. Lots and lots of baby birds. Last year, at one point, I actually had 43 baby birds at the same time, 43 baby birds at the same time. So last year overall, I had close to 250 animals come through. The year before it was 250. But this was a time when there were 43 baby birds. And I did call on for people to help me too, because it was quite overwhelming. And they have to be fed when they're tiny, tiny, every 20 minutes. So they might be fed a formula through the syringe, or they might be fed with forceps live mealworms. There have been some birds that I've had to squeeze the guts out of a mealworm and feed it to them because they're just so tiny that they can't even handle a piece of a live mealworm. So lots and lots of baby birds, they'll be coming soon, and lots of baby bunnies. Now, baby bunnies send me out to forage. And one thing about baby bunnies is they have a digestive system that they need to be eating and pushing the food through constantly. So I can't just feed them in the morning and come back later and feed them. I've got to make sure that there are those greens in there pushing through the food through their digestive tract. So you might find me on the side of the road picking dandelions, or going in my garden and picking my lettuce for them, or lots of things, but it's very, very busy, time consuming. Isn't that cute? That little bunny eating a dandelion. It's so cute.
Dandelions are important.
Bunnies, well, people will tell you that bunnies are the hardest thing that we rehab, but I don't know. I have had very good success with the bunnies. you know what those are? Baby possums, little baby possums. Possums are our only marsupials, and when they are born, they're just like the size of a jelly bean, and they kind of slide up their mom's belly and into the pocket, and they attach to the little teats. And so they never, and the formula, the mother's milk just drips constantly. So they never learn to suck. So there is no way we're ever going to teach them to suck from a nipple or from the syringe. We have to tube feed them and then keep working with them to try to teach them to lap. And it's a big occasion when they're finally lapping and you can stop tube feeding. And here's a very brief little. So I say when they get in that formula, and then we thicken it gradually, when they get in that formula, they get very messy, but then they lick it off of each other. They start licking each other. So I figure that's nutrition too, right? So just see that one again. It's so cute. Okay, and a lot of times we have to go out and buy a lot of fresh vegetables for their animals. And you know, that makes me think this might be a great time to stop and say, you know, we are purchasing all this food ourselves. We're all volunteers. We are all permitted through the Department of Wildlife Resources, but we are all volunteers. You kind of get in your mind that when you want to do this, you are saying, I'm going to be able to provide the food and buy the food for them. But you know, donations often help. So I just brought a little donation box. All joking aside, I've asked Sherry if she would pass the basket just like in church. Sherry, will you please? And if you have anything you can put in the basket, it goes towards the care of all these animals in the winter. Okay. Thank you, Sherry. So here we are with the fresh vegetables, and here's a squirrel enjoying some of that. Do my birders know what this is? Okay, we've got, it came to me as a downy. When I received it, they told me I was receiving a downy. It came from Kilmarnock. That's another thing. You know, these people will drive hours to get to a rehabber, and there are no rehabbers in the Northern Neck. So I'm getting lots of animals from the Northern Neck, King and Queen, way out. Colonial Beach, Heathsville, Kilmarnock, Tappahannock. This is a yellow-bellied sapsucker. Okay. So he came in and he'd been a window stripe and couldn't fly and was in pretty bad shape. But I worked with him and I knew, well, he's going to eat sap, right? He's a sapsucker. So how am I going to do this? And I had sapsuckers before that I fed dilute pure maple syrup. So this one was doing well, and he would take it from the syringe very well. So I was really pleased with that. And then he would take a little bit from a little bowl. I was very pleased with that. But then going back to knowing about the natural behavior of these animals, I thought, well, I just want to make it as natural as it would be. So I went out in my woods and looked to see where sapsuckers had been, what trees had they been on. And I found that they were on my holly trees. So I cut a chunk of holly tree out and drilled holes. This is that right there. I drilled holes kind of diagonally down that I could fill with the dilute pure maple syrup and put it in his cage, and he went right to it. And I think I have a video of that. Let's see. See if I can figure out how to start it. Is that the one? Yeah, you want to try it? There you go. Oh, no, this isn't the one. I'm sorry. This is the one before. Yeah, try this one. Here. Oh, it's advancing it. I think it said it has to be on the picture somewhere. There you go. Thank you, Nancy. There you go. So he went right to it. You can't really see it in this picture, but he has a pretty messed up wing. And I just decided to let him fly on my screen porch. Thank you again, my dear husband, Mike, for letting me let the birds fly and poop all over the porch. So this guy is still on my porch, and you know they migrate. So I've got to get that bird back out there before migration, but I want to give it the best chance of being able to fly that long distance. So it is building its strength, even though its wing isn't perfect. I'm still worried about it, but it can fly 20 feet back and forth, back and forth, back and forth across my porch. So it is scheduled to be released next week. And we're just going to keep our fingers crossed that it can make it that long distance. I mean, it's come so far, we just got to give it a chance, right? Okay, here is a hummingbird that came in. And this has been a very unique and learning experience to learn how to treat a tiny, tiny little hummingbird. And here I am feeding it. I think you're hearing other birds that are flying around the porch. Yeah, so if I'm only going to have it a short period of time, I can use the nectar that everybody makes with the sugar water. But if I'm going to have this bird for any length of time, I need to provide some protein because they are eating little insects. And I even tried to buy flightless gnats, but it was a mess. It was just, so now I actually add a little bit of cricket powder. And I also make sure that all these birds and all these mammals that I'm feeding have plenty of calcium to keep them from getting bone diseases and other vitamins, and especially vitamin B. So we're always worried about that as well. This is a tiny baby screech owl. And I had to work with it to get it to eat. So I was hand feeding it, and you can hear its little begging calls. I just am hitting the wrong spot. There we go. No, it didn't. You do. Is the volume up on this so they can hear it? It should be. It's up as high as it. Yeah. Was I? You're not my mama. There we go. There we go. They may be little, but they have talons, and you see I'm wearing the gloves. There's something else I was going to say about that. I'll probably come up with it. This is a story of some cliff swallows. So the Wildlife Center of Virginia got a call from the Virginia Department of Transportation, and they were going to build a new bridge in Fredericksburg, Virginia, and they were going to demolish the old bridge. But there were lots of cliff swallows living in nests under there, and a lot of fledglings, a lot of nestlings, and of course, a lot of parents. So they sent a crew out with big bucket trucks and put men in the bucket trucks, and they rescued as many of those fledglings and nestlings as they could. And they took them to the Wildlife Center, and the Wildlife Center wound up with slightly under 100 cliff swallows. And they were and little babies, you know, that needed to be fed, and they were put out a call, please help. So another fellow rehabber and aware and we each took 8. So it was a very interesting experience too. They loved to nest in these little sacks like that imitated their nests under the bridge. But as you know, they are a bird that catches their food on the wing. So I could feed them when they were little nestlings staying in the nest. But when they became fledglings, I had to work gradually to teach them to come and get food on the fly before I felt like I could release them. So let's see what they look like. They weren't this good right away. It took a while. Live mealworms. Okay, does anybody know what these are? These, yes, they're baby chimney swifts. So we get a lot of calls of chimney swifts that have fallen into someone's fireplace. Sometimes people just think it's a nuisance. We try to talk them through. It's only going to be a few weeks. They'll be gone. Hang in there. You're doing such a great service for these little birds that are declining in numbers because there aren't as many chimneys or non-capped chimneys for them to live in. Okay, so chimney swifts are on the side of their nest or on the side of the chimney, and the parents fly under them to feed them. Again, I'm trying to think about what's the natural behavior of these birds. And so I helped with, when they were just nestlings, I held the nest up and fed them from below. Nope. Am I going to keep having to get you to do this? Come get me another, come do me another, it's a video.
Is that a video?
Mhm. Oh, it's because I was trying to do it. Yeah, you did that. You got it. I don't think so. And they're getting a special formula for insectivores. It's a formula that I make most of the time, although we do have a product we keep on hand that is already pre-made. Okay, so as the chimney swifts got older, I knew I needed to provide them with a chimney. So this is a box. I think I'm going to keep this one. This will hold a lot of chimney swifts here. I scored the side of it so they had something to cling to. And then they lived in the box. And what they had to learn before I could release them was to come up to the box and get the food for me at the top of the box. Then they had to learn to be able to fly out of the chimney and be up in the air, and then finally return to the chimney. And then when they could do all of that, I could release them. And their wings had to cross. You see how those wings are crossing? They had to cross before they were old enough to be released. And here they are. This is another video. Let's see if I can do it. I must have a problem with knowing where my finger is or something. And yes, they are that noisy, really, really, really. Every time you walked on the porch. Okay, do you know what this is? Can you see that bird? A royal tern. And this just kind of shows that there are some birds that are fish eaters. And that is a challenge because I have to call people and say, can you go fish in your pond for me? I know you do fishing all the time. Would you meet me somewhere and bring me some fish? You know, sometimes I have to buy them. Sometimes I get Julie's husband to go fishing for me, but it's a real challenge. But here is the royal tern getting fed fish. Yep. You know what this is? Osprey. Okay, this is Midnight. And I never name the animals because I always want to be aware that these are wild animals. I don't talk to them. It's business because I want them to stay wild. And a lot of times when I have little mentees under me, I have to teach them, no, you can't cuddle this animal. And I've had to say to people who bring in animals that are really kind of holding the animal and they think they're comforting it, I'll have to say, you know, I know you think you're helping that animal and comforting it, but you're really stressing the bleep out of it. And, you know, you just have to put it somewhere quiet and not do that. This bird got a name though, because Julie brought it to me at midnight. So, you know, I'm sure you have a great rescue story about him, but you want to jump in with a rescue story?
That's all right. Came from a long distance.
Okay. Okay, so Midnight came to me and he was my first osprey. And that's when I learned that getting fish was going to be a real problem. This is a wound that he has under his wing. So we had to treat that wound. Could have been a fight it got into, and it could have been a hook that got in there and then was out. It could have been he fell on a stick. We're just really not sure what caused that wound. But what we found is that Midnight wouldn't eat. He wouldn't eat minnows or any fish I put in with him. he wouldn't eat that frozen flounder I got. I don't understand it, or the tilapia. And they're very, very high strung birds and high stress. And so we were having a hard time even force feeding him. But eventually I just kind of listened to him and figured out what I could do to get this bird to eat. And this is what it was. Rub under his beak. Calming down, rub under his beak. I have to pry open his mouth. Put food way back there. But the key was rubbing under his beak. So he's starting to get a little stressed here. So I'm gonna start rubbing again. Now this is a case where I have a towel or something on my leg and I am pressing him down with my body to keep those talons away from me. My goodness, I dressed up with earrings that day, didn't I? To feed the osprey. So as the osprey was healing, he got much better at eating. This is very common for almost all the raptors that come in. They don't recognize the food that we're trying to give them, and we have to introduce them to the food and force feed them. Okay, but Midnight finally got better. And here's a video of him actually, this is his outdoor enclosure now he's in, and he's catching fish in a tub. I don't know why I can't hit that just right. There we go. And it's gone. Can you believe it? You want to see that one again? Pretty amazing. I watched this over and over again, trying to figure out, is this a magic trick? Where did the fish go to? He had to have swallowed it. But I love what I do. And here I am, just as happy as I can be, feeding a little bunny. Okay, so any questions that you want to ask now, or we can ask later about rehab? And there are many, many more things we do, but we were trying to figure out what we could share with you to give you kind of an introductory. Yes.
Is there anything, do you chile for lead in eagles, like the first eagle we saw? What is your treatment for lead poisoning?
I don't, and the eagles, because I've got two answers for you there. Eagles are special in their treatment. A rehabber who is a category 2 rehabber, I'm a category 2, Julie's a category 1. She has to be my apprentice for 2 years. Then she can move up to category 2. Okay, a category 2 rehabber can only keep an eagle for 24 hours. Then they must be sent to a category 3. And a category 3 is a hospital like the Wildlife Center of Virginia or Blue Ridge Wildlife Center. There are a number of places around the state, but you have to be a category 3, which means you have a veterinarian on staff. So it's more like a hospital. So many, many times the eagles come in and we're scrambling to get transportation. And so I will try to stabilize them as best I can, but the chelation, that they do that wherever they're sent. Yes.
There was a question on chat. It says, could you please post an address to which we can send donations?
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. And yes, we will. I'll figure out exactly how to do that in just a minute. Maybe we'll hold up one of the brochures. Can we do that?
I'm working.
Okay.
You
So-
want another question from chat?
Okay, wait one second. Let me answer. The other question was about the chelation and the other was about the eagle. Okay. So I wanted to just mention that recently 2 eagles came to me, one dead on arrival and one died overnight before the transporter could take it to the wildlife center. They still have to be handled specially. There is a national eagle repository in Colorado that takes all the eagles and they, process them and they save either whole parts or feathers, and Indian tribes or other people who use them in ceremonial ways can request them. So I had, thank you, I had 2 eagles in my freezer, double bagged in my freezer for a month because the eagle repository was so backed up, they couldn't send me the shipping label. So about a week ago, I guess, I finally got the shipping labels and put 2 frozen deceased eagles. I mean, you know how long it takes a turkey to thaw out, right? Okay, so 2 deceased frozen eagles in a box, overnighted them by FedEx to the repository in Colorado. So I just want to finish that. Now I'll take that other question.
Wonderful to hear about your work again. What precautions do you take against the risk of rabies with mammals?
Okay, good question. Very good question. Thank you. So rabies is a separate area where you can choose to work with rabies vector animals or not. Rabies vector animals that are the animals that are considered rabies vector in Virginia, there are 5. You want to make any guesses? Raccoons, skunks, fox. What is it? No, not squirrels, not coyotes, bats. It's groundhog. It's groundhog. Yeah. So, but I'm glad that came up. Thank you again for the question, because then I can say to you, like the possums and the squirrels, they are mammals. They could possibly get rabies. I've gone to the Virginia Health Department site and they keep records. And I think like in the past 10 years, there's been 1 report of maybe squirrel rabies. It just doesn't happen. And the possums have a different body temperature and they think that may be why they don't get rabies. So we can't say they never get rabies, but only these 5 just is the state, suggesting that you take particular precautions.
Call them top tier.
Top tier, okay, top tier. And even they, when they come in, most often do not have rabies. And most often when you see them out and about in the day, like a fox, they don't have rabies. It's just they have a baby and they've got to go find some food now for that baby. Okay, so most of the time they don't have rabies. And you do know that when they really start becoming aggressive and acting very, very strange, you might want to be a little bit more cautious. And I wouldn't suggest you go up and try to catch a raccoon or play with the babies. They have some other parasites as well. You want to add anything there? Okay, so squirrels, don't need to worry about them. Possums, don't need to worry about them. Possums also are immune to snake venom. Something in their system, they're immune to snake venom. Yeah.
Another question, are all animals and birds released at the point of origin? For example, the chimney swifts.
Okay, first I'll answer that in general. We like to try to return them to their home territory. They know their home territory. They know where the best perches are. They know where to hunt. They know where they can hide. So we like to try to do that. And we will drive long distances to try to get them back. But there are definitely cases where it's a dangerous place to return them to. There could be other reasons that we do not return them to where they came from. So in general, we try. We know that under the regulations of rehab, we must return turtles to their site of origin. There are no such rules about the other animals, but we try to get them back to where they came from.
Well, for instance, if you take migratory birds, right? So birds that are coming through, blackbirds, that sort of thing, regular blackbirds.
So you can be heard.
You could release them where you are. But if you have, for instance, an owl with a small territory and a mate, then it is crucial to return that bird back to where it came from. Anything like a cardinal, he has a mate where he was, and we make sure that they go back to where we find it extremely important, and we go way out of the way to make sure they get back to where they came from.
Yes.
So I'm Marie, we're the ones, my daughter Abigail and Emily brought me to bunny rabbits 2 years ago in the spring. And Dad wanted us to release them back in our neighborhood. But we had sighted a rat snake around the time that they needed to be released. So she said, probably would be a good idea to release the baby bunnies back in our neighborhood or in our yard. So she was kind enough to invite my daughters to come up and release the bunnies through the woods near her house, which I just have to say that's how thoughtful Deb is, that she waited and worked it out so that my girls could go release the bunny rabbits because they felt that they have potential.
Yeah.
That is also important, and that's also what we do for the finders, is we'll call you to be at a release. If you can absolutely do it, we want you involved. Because the finders are key. That's key to everything we do. We wouldn't know that they needed help if somebody didn't call us on it.
I'm glad you shared another example of why it wasn't a good idea to send it back. Yes.
So I have a turtle release question. I literally was pulling onto an on-ramp of a very busy road and stopped traffic because there was a turtle on the on-ramp. And I'm looking around, going, I can't release this turtle. There's nothing but a gravel hill, a parking lot, and more traffic and more parking lots. So I took the turtle and released it into a park, a nature center.
Well, so what I would typically do in this situation, and I know it's tough, boy, we can find some turtles in some bad spots, is just the closest, depending on what you had. I don't know whether it was a water turtle or a box turtle. Okay, so if it was a box turtle,
Can you see the address?
I would just try to find the closest wooded area that you could go to. I mean, it's a hassle. For instance, I've got him many times crossing 199 and he's going in this direction, that means I've got to go across 4 lanes of traffic, the median and everything else, and up a slope on the other side to get him in the direction he's going. I agree with you. Sometimes it's super difficult to get them because their territories are pretty much ruined by all of our roads. Go ahead.
Wildlife center is so far away. What kind of efforts are there to have one right here?
Okay, so all down here for right now is individual rehabbers. We have been trying to get what I would say a southeastern wildlife center. A lot of people just cannot agree. We need one very badly, especially for water birds. We do have so many water birds down here compared to what they would have in Waynesboro. Egrets and herons and geese and ducks. TWR, we handle everything from North Carolina up. I've taken calls up to past Colonial Beach and down into North Carolina. And in that area down there, the geese and the duck population is huge. And it's very difficult for an individual rehabber to rehab all the geese. I mean, that's a lot of work to do goslings that will end up growing to a huge bird, and cleaning and maintaining all of that. That's a big job to do as an individual. And we are far behind, many years behind in getting that going. So yes, that needs to happen.
How can we help with that?
Well, I mean, it's going to take, even the wildlife center, it's all donations. Okay, so they need to have somebody full time doing grant writing and fundraising all the time. I'm likely going to be paid person doing that. We can't just have, okay, we're going to have a little fundraiser and get it going. We're going to have a vet on staff who's going to be paid. Certain positions are going to be paid. So it's a big job. I'm going to say it needs to be somewhere, a happy medium, not in Virginia Beach, just because everything in Virginia Beach is horrendous to get anything done. Chesapeake or Hampton or somewhere central where we could get something started. We actually even looked at the Bluebird Gap Farm area, that spot, as trying to start something up there. Gloucester would probably be cheaper, and certainly anything be cheaper than Virginia Beach, but they just have too many rules and regs there to get involved in it. But yes, that is something we desperately need and really would like to see happen, especially for our waterfowl.
I was going to swing back to the rabies question, and those of you at home, we had a question about the rabies, and I talked about the 5 rabies highest tier animals. But I also wanted to say that if you are going to be a rehabber of the rabies vector, you have to get a rabies series of shots yourself. They're quite expensive. And every year you have to either have your titers checked or get a booster shot. And then you have to have those facilities for those rabies vector animals separated from any other animals you may be rehabbing. And there have to be very special cleansing and cleaning and handling the dirty dishes and the dirty towels. So there's a lot more that goes with that. Colleen, anything else there? Yes.
One more chat question. We presume you don't want the untrained general public to attempt rescue on their own. We should contact your organizations and do our license, right?
Oh, do you want to answer that?
So
It's a good question.
here's the gist on that. Any good Samaritan can rescue. Now, you are covered by the Good Samaritan law for that. So I would say that yes, there is an occasion where I would ask the general public to do a rescue. For instance, if you're calling me and you have seen the hawk down in a lane of traffic, I would like you to get it out of there. I'm going to tell you to throw your jacket over it and at least get it out of the road. I'm half hour away. That bird is going to be smashed before I get there. So yes, I have had to ask people to do it. I will explain to you what I want you to do, but yes, it does happen. Would I like to be able to do the rescue myself? Sometimes it just can't happen. You can't get there quick enough.
Okay, so I'm going to add to that though a little bit. I mean, we're talking about little bunnies and little birds too, and skinks. I got a call about a skink this evening. So certainly the public can rescue them, but then they should locate a rehabber. We can tell many, many stories about people who have brought animals to us that they kept for 3 or 4 days and fed them something that they read online. And now I've got to undo the damage they've done to that animal and get them going in the right direction. And at that point, you are breaking the law because these are, all wildlife is owned by the state. And you can get yourself in some trouble for having a wild animal in your home or in your possession if you are not permitted, right?
Especially if it's a rabies vector.
Yes.
I'm sure that some of the animals that you get can't release. So what happens with those? I know that you can't keep them all, that ambassadors.
Mhm.
Can you repeat that, please?
Yes, I'm going to repeat that question. Their question is not all of the animals we see can be released and what happens when an animal is non-releasable. And she mentioned that they all can't be kept as ambassador animals. Now, Colleen's going to talk to you in a minute and she's going to share a couple of our ambassador animals. So those of us who believe in providing education to the public find some worth in having some ambassador animals. But you're so right. I don't keep ambassador animals because I have a kind of a small operation with limited numbers of enclosures, and I need those enclosures for the animals that are coming in for rehab. So when it becomes, I will keep animals and keep animals, just hope upon hope. But when it becomes apparent that the animal is in pain or is never going to be fixable or releasable to a point they could live in the wild self-sufficiently, then the decision is made to humanely euthanize. And it is probably the saddest part of being a wildlife rehabber. And some days I can just do it. And some days I say, I can't do that today. I'll try again tomorrow, but I just can't do that. And I talk to myself a lot. The first year I was a rehabber, Colleen remembers, I called all my friends in Aware and said, can you meet me for lunch? I'm just having a really hard time with the death. And we all got together and shared stories, and you felt better. You felt like you were doing more good than you were doing harm. And then when you were making that decision, it was a good decision that the animal would no longer be in pain, and so it helped. And you kind of start to get used to it a little bit. Yes.
On top of everything else you're doing, are you also knitting those utterly charming bird nests?
Oh, she's asking about, are we knitting the little bird's nest that you saw in some of the slides with the little birds in there? Well, no, we have wonderful volunteers, different organizations that are knitting them for us. And we go through them and we wash them and everything, but eventually some of them get a little bit messy and it's just drop those in the trash. So I just got a shipment of little nests from an organization. They're just really appreciated. I don't like to keep birds in the nest that they came in if it's provided, because that nest may be full of parasites and whatever. So I discard those very quickly and use the little tissue lining that I can, clean out daily.
You could provide the specs for them. I have a teenage knitter at home.
I absolutely can. Okay, so are you with the bird club or the, or Master Naturals or bird? Okay, we'll get those specs then. Okay. More questions at this point? Okay, I'm going to bring Colleen up and she's going to finish us off with some real examples of animals that came to us. We worked with them and eventually we determined they were not releasable, but they became ambassadors.
So if we stop screen share, does she want to bring them up in front of the camera?
Yeah, so when you bring them up, you'll want to bring them up in front of the
If you want,
camera.
I can.
What do you want first?
The kite.
Stop screen sharing. Are you done or did you have?
Um,
If you're not done.
I see what
keep
you're
going.
saying. No,
No, you're
okay.
fine.
All right, so we have a couple slides, but I'm going to actually get Nancy to drop out the screen sharing because it's more important for you to see the actual animals. This is a Mississippi kite in Virginia, which is very unheard of. Just want to show you the quick pictures of a broken wing. It's been repaired with a pin. And here is the kite. And then Colleen's going to bring it. And she's also going to bring this beautiful bird. This is Anita. She is a kestrel. She got her name because Colleen was just going, gosh, I need to give this bird a name. Anita. There you go. So that's how she got that name. Okay, so we're going to drop the screen out and Colleen's going to come show you the birds.
Kenny kite. This kite is just 1 year old. It came into us last year. Somebody found it and it wasn't able to fly. We took it to a vet in Chesterfield County and the vet said he would operate and put a pin in it. But if it couldn't fly, he didn't want it euthanized, which if he's going to give us a free operation, I can understand he didn't want it euthanized after he did that. So we said that wouldn't be a problem. We could put it in education if it wasn't flighted. So he put the pin in and the pin stayed in, and then he removed the pin and we put it in 3 different types of cages to see if it could fly. It totally cannot fly at all. In fact, the cage that it lives in, it's not over 1 foot. His perches are down low on the ground, about 1 foot to 2 foot off of the ground. He can hop and get up on them, but he can't fly from one to another. So he doesn't need a huge area since he's not flighted. Since it is a migrating bird, it's a little bit more trouble. Instead of it being in an outside pen, which Eagle Scouts build for us. So we're always looking for an Eagle Scout that wants to build a pen. Instead of living outside in the winter, he has to come in the house during the winter. So right now he is inside because it's too cold for him being outside. He likes insects. He will eat dead mice that we unfreeze and give him. But he's really a bug eater, grasshoppers, cicadas. The unusual thing about the Mississippi kite is they just come through Virginia. They don't live in Virginia all the time. That's why we're so excited to have him, and birders are really excited to see him. He's a totally different color now that he's an adult than when he was a baby. When they mate, it's different than other raptors. They will live in pairs together. So you might have 4 pairs raising babies that are living in the same area, and they protect each other. If something comes after one or one of them's babies, the others will go after it. Also, they will nest where you have wasp nest, and the wasp keep other predators from coming around them. So there's a lot of interesting things about the kite. When they do migrate, they migrate all the way to Central America. So that's a long way for them. We're hoping that Kenny has a long life with us. And we're just really glad to have him. He likes to take a bath. He has a big dish in his cage, and he gets in there just like a cardinal or a blue jay and takes a bath. And he makes a little teeny noise. He doesn't have a voice like a raptor, and you just heard it, but he makes a little teeny noise. If you want to talk a little bit, I'll walk around with him some. Yes,
How long have you had him?
just 1 year.
So have you been through, I'm wondering if you've seen restlessness in the migratory period, you know, the way.
Not yet. That's coming up. So yeah, it's just, right. We got him probably, I would say, April or May of last year. So he's just coming up on 1 year.
Okay, Colleen will walk, down the aisle and let you get a little bit closer. Well, if we've got any questions, this would be a good time we can answer those questions too, as she's taking this bird around. Any questions?
No, we don't put any of our birds together. We don't need to do any breeding or anything like that. Now, they can hear each other in the backyard, but they're not together. Careful. Yeah. And he's not really good with his balance, so that's when we'll go really slow because he gets off balance real easily.
For those of you at home, Colleen's walking the kite around, and she was saying that it lives very happily in a cage in her home, and it does not live with any other birds in its cage. In rehab, in my outdoor enclosures, I am able to put birds that are the same species together. Like I have 2 barred owls in one enclosure, and I had 3 great horned owls in an enclosure, and 2 red-tailed hawks in an enclosure. Some people we know put mixed raptors in their enclosures, but I just haven't tried that yet. Do you want to talk just for a minute about how they could volunteer? So I'm going to put Julie on the spot. One thing that we do always need are transporters. And transporters generally don't have to handle the animals at all. They're just already crated or boxed up, and you're just moving it from one place to the other. And in fact, the master naturalist, I know you have this as one of your projects that you can earn hours for. So you can talk a little bit about that and then going into the rescue. Okay.
Okay, so as she said, transporting is the simplest thing to be how you can be involved. If you're a master naturalist, we have a program and you can sign up for that. The ways that you would be involved in transporting is, for instance, if Deb got in an eagle and it needed to go to Waynesboro to Wildlife Center. And that is something that it's all fire department, okay? It's never convenient. So we could call you and you may say no, and I call the next person down the line. But if you can go, then you get the deets on where to pick it up and where you're going with it. You're going to keep the vehicle quiet. You're not going to play the radio. You're not going to talk loud, and you're just going to keep everything moderate temperatures and go directly to where you're supposed to be dropping the bird off. So no stopping to shop or get something to eat.
Sometimes it's more local. Like many times, I've had a transporter go to Colonial Veterinary Clinic, Dr. Case veterinary practice, and pick up an animal that he's seen there, and then bring it to me. in Newton. So it's a trip to his veterinary practice, it's my house. and
Yeah,
then back.
it's not always super long distance. But it really, especially during baby season, really helps Deb because she has so many mouths to feed every 15 minutes. For her to have vet service back and forth, or for people who have found an injured animal but can't transport, so we need that picked up from the finder, that sort of thing. For rescue, that's a little more difficult. We have classes for that, but we just had that class. Yeah, so that just passed. But
How often does that come around?
sometimes twice a year, but we're headed into baby season, so there won't be another one now because it would just be too busy to swing it. The next rescue class we have is going to be on ducks and geese. You could go to that one. That's still available. The general rescue one has just passed last weekend. You kind of need a basics on rescue. There's a lot to know and a lot of species to know and all of that. It can be quite MacGyver-ishy as well. Did you want me to cover something else on that? Okay.
We got a chat question?
Are there any specific animals that you would not be allowed to rehab?
Yes.
Okay, so coyotes for, pardon?
Repeat the question for the folks on Zoom.
Oh, sure. Okay, so the state Department of Wildlife Resources tells us what we can and cannot rehab. Okay, so there's invasive species or things that are considered nuisance by the state that we can't rehab. Okay, so we cannot receive a coyote, we can't receive mice, we can't receive rats, we can't do starlings, pigeons. Those are examples of what the state would deem
Deer.
an adult deer.
Adult deer.
We can
can't
only
have
do
adult-
fawns with spots.
We can do fawns and, I don't do fawns, but there are rehabbers that do them. You need a lot of space and high fences to do fawns. We can't do adult deer, and a deer is considered an adult on December 31st of the year it was born. So once December 31st hits, we're not going to be seeing any more fawns until they're born in the spring.
The person asked about beavers.
Yes, we can do beavers. Absolutely. That's a rabies vector animal. And for our closest rehabber for beavers is going to be Cindy Lake in a Newport News. She has otters and beavers.
Bears?
Oh, Wildlife Center does do bear. We don't do bear down here. So we would have to send it up to them.
Unless it's a bear on cocaine. Have you seen that movie? Ed? I don't know. Looks weird to me.
The things
It's
don't
a
make
movie,
out of.
everybody. Okay. Bring that little kite over here and then we'll get the kestrel. You gotta be out of here in about 10 minutes. So let's get the kestrel going.
Sorry.
Okay, this is Anita. I need a name, Anita. Let's see if we can Make sure everybody at home can see Anita. This is a kestrel. Look at that bobbing tail. That's pretty normal, typical, I guess is the word. Okay, so I am going to walk around. I want to make sure everybody here gets to see Anita, the American kestrel. And then I'm going to walk around with her while Colleen talks about her. Okay. Come on. Come on.
Okay, Anita is 8 years old. She is a female, and we can tell that she's a female because of her feathers and coloration. If she were a male, she would have some blue on the back of her head and on the tips of her feathers. And so she is a female, and they lay eggs. The egg is really kind of big for such a small bird. This is her egg. And this is another one. It concerns me when they lay the eggs. I've tried different things to, maybe if you leave the egg in, will they stop laying? If you take the eggs out, will they stop laying? And it doesn't affect her at all. She's going to lay the number that she lays anyway. And when she starts out, they're real dark like this. And sometimes they're speckled. So they start out in a dark color, and then she might lay 1 or 2 a week. And as she gets to where she's going to stop laying, they're absolutely white. So they lose color as she lays them. She came to us as a baby, still had baby down on her head. What happens with her is her beak will peel off, the top beak on both sides. It's sort of like some people with their fingernails, they just seem to peel off. Well, that's what would happen. So I would take her to the vet over and over, and they would shave it. And then it'd be fine for a while, and then it would happen again. So it went on for like a year. And so then the vet went ahead and just showed me how to do it. Said that, I could do this for her. And so it must have been something when she was born, maybe it's some deficiency. We don't know, but we did not want her to go back out into the wild and populate and have babies that would have that problem too. So she's been in our education. To put a mammal or a bird into education, the rehabber gets a feeling and decides it, but it's not just my decision. I have to take it to the veterinarian that I work with, or a veterinarian that will look the animal or bird over and agree with me, yes, this would make a good candidate. There are some birds and animals that just do not do well in captivity, like a Cooper's hawk. Those just don't do well. So not every animal would be a candidate to go into education. So the vet has to sign a letter agreeing to that. Then if say it's a bird, I have to send a copy of the vet letter, what I'm going to talk about, what the bird's going to eat, what I'm going to do in case of an emergency, a picture of the cage they're going to live in. And I send all of that to the federal government. They look at it, and then they will approve it and add it to the permit. If it's a mammal, then the USDA approves it. The USDA just did a surprise inspection on me yesterday, which is really nerve-wracking. So they just call and say, this is Dr. So-and-so with USDA, and I'm in front of your house. So you have to hope that the cages are clean and everything looks halfway decent, which it does. And so she comes, they are very nice. They're not there to give me a hard time, but they're there to make sure I'm doing what I should do. And this goes back from years ago when people would chain a bear to a chain at a service station, and things were bad back in the old days. So they do come and inspect my cages. They want to make sure that the animal or bird has clean water, clean food, clean bedding, no sharp wires on the cage. They're there to check on the safety of whatever animal it is. So they come and do that at least once a year unannounced. And so I did pass yesterday, so that was a good thing. So
Is that just for the ambassador animals, or is that just because you're a rehab?
no, this is for education. Yeah, the rehab animals, if DWR got a complaint or some reason felt like you needed to be checked on, they could do the same thing. They could show up and say, let me see your paperwork. Let me see what animals you have. But these education birds are a totally different thing. And the mammals also, because they're never going back out in the wild. This is going to be the only kind of life they have. So you don't want them in a real small cage, or you don't want them abused and not taken care of properly. So they do that, and they do that with zoos like Maymont, the Metro Zoo, the Wildlife Center, Blue Ridge, anybody that has an education animal that goes out in the public and teaches the public. But we really enjoy that, and we feel that it's a need, and it does give some birds another chance of living.
Talk a little bit about the Jessups and the anglers.
Okay, these birds, when I go home, all of this equipment comes off of them. The thing that goes around their leg is called an anklet, and it has a grommet on it. You put that around the leg, and then you have a strap called a jess, and that goes through the grommet. And then that hooks on a swivel so that it doesn't get tangled up, and then it goes onto your glove. All of these things we have to order from a company out in Washington State, and it's a falconry company. That's where we get this from. So everything is very high priced because it's a specialized piece of equipment that we use. So that's what happens. And especially with birds, birds are really, we need to be very careful with their feet. Their feet are looked at all the time. You look at the bottom of them. I have lots of birds. And so every week, everybody's feet get looked at, because if they get a cut on their foot and then get infection in there, that's a real large problem. So we want to make sure the feet are healthy and clean. Oh, you're very comfortable. See how comfortable she is?
You need to make an announcement, right? You need to make some announcements. Nancy, do you need to make announcements?
Yeah, when you're done, I mean, we just have a couple of quickies to do.
All right.
We have a quick question.
The only thing we were going to say, I did bring brochures. If you would like a brochure and look at our Facebook page and our website, our Facebook page is really interesting because it has a lot of different things we're doing and different animals that are coming in. Who had a question? Nope, I think Nancy, it's your turn. I don't, up here.
What is your Facebook page?
It's on the pamphlets long, so it's on the pamphlet. So I'll leave those here, and we can just give those out.
Well, I have to say, that's about as exciting and thrilling as a presentation I've seen. You guys, your time, your passion, your dedication, it's just really phenomenal. I think whether we're bird club or master naturalists, we're all animal bird lovers, and what you're doing is just it's really an amazing service, and we thank you all. These birds are fabulous. I just have a couple of quickies. We do have a field trip coming up this Saturday. We're going to be going down the Colonial Parkway, starting at the Marquee Target parking lot at 8 o'clock. I saw George put out an email. If you are planning to go on it and you have a national park pass, would you please bring it? There is the possibility that we'll end up down in Yorktown on the national park property. And you don't have to have one. One pass covers the pass holder and 3 other adults. So if you've got one, toss it in. It's going to be really fun. Winter waterfowl are out there. There are a lot of birds out there. So that's Saturday, 8 o'clock. Meet at the the Marquee Target parking lot and probably try and carpool or group up. And then possibly lunch at the Yorktown Pub for those who want to stick around and have lunch. So that's Saturday. Starting on Friday, great backyard bird count. I hope everybody will participate in that. It does not have to be just your backyard. It can be anywhere. I know it says backyard, but this is a huge global initiative, and it's fundamental. You're going to be doing citizen science. It's part of the solution. So I encourage you to get out there and do that. You just need to do 15 minutes of observation, enter a list, go and do it again. Just go as many places as you want, entering bird lists from Friday to Monday, and you're part of a huge global effort. So I encourage you all to do that. We do have a bird walk on February 25th at Newport Park, 8 o'clock. We do have the Cape Henry Audubon is going to join us that day. Probably 10 or 12 folks. So we're going to have a little bit bigger crowd. So there'll be a couple of us. If we need to split up, we'll split things up. The March meeting will most likely be hybrid. There'll be more to come from that, but as long as everybody feels comfortable coming, we'll continue with that. The last thing is the deadline for the March newsletter is February 24th. February is a short month, so be paying attention to that. It would be wonderful if those of you who are out doing great backyard bird count, take some photos, send them to Mary Ellen. She loves getting your photos. If you want to do a little write-up about what you did for Great Backyard Bird Count, that would be great too. So February 24th, deadline for the newsletter. And that's all I have. So Connie, Ms. Prez.
Hi, it's great to see all of you. This will also be a very, very short announcement. The nominating committee has just about finished up their items, and the slate will be presented to the Historic Heritage chapter. March 1st is the next board meeting. March 8th is the big general meeting for elections for graduation of the cohorts of William and Mary Ann, cohort 16. April 1st is the graduation gala and gathering at Freedom Park. So all that's getting together. If you haven't been out on Bassett Trace Trail, I encourage you to do that. All of you who have donated soft plastic, it has come together. There's a new bench out in memory of Glenda White. So go out, take time to sit. It's about a quarter mile in, just about where the blue loop takes off. And finally, the new Master Naturalist logo sent by the great thinking minds of VCE is out. And if you peruse the VMN homepage, you'll get to see it. And that's all I have to say about that. I have any questions for me, because I don't think you probably have any, and I'm done.
The basket.
The basket. We'll find the basket.
Sherry's got the basket.
It's coming.
Okay, everybody, any other questions, comments? Anybody seen, well, we've seen some pretty cool things here tonight. I can't help but mention that I'm going to be doing Great Backyard Bird Count in Maine, hopefully with a stellar sea eagle. Okay, with that, we are adjourned. We are finished. Thanks, everybody, for coming.